Welcome to So Much Talk with Ruthie K and Anna of RK Artisans. We are here today to talk to you again about sewing. And this time, well, it's sewing and clothing in general, because clothing is part of sewing, right? So we're going to talk about women's suiting because we have women's tuxedos coming out as a line of clothes that you can buy online. We've talked a little bit about why we went there, and we'll be telling that story as we go. But I thought let's talk about women's suiting in general. There's the whole new pearls and pantsuits again because we have a new lady running for president, and that brings up to us pantsuits. And come on, ladies. Women's pantsuits are not the best things out there. There's some good ones. Yes, there are. But most of them are, if we could find something better, we would, right? So let's think about it. I wish I thought to bring pictures, but we'll do this another day. But I love women's suiting. And most of us think of women's suiting as a jacket and a skirt, a jacket and a pair of pants. And I wore suits a lot of my professional life. When I was a corporate trainer, I wore suits. When I worked in as an alterationist at two professional stores, one a men's store and one a bridal salon, I had to wear suits as a tailor. And many of them were pantsuits or skirt suits. So there's many options. Now, sometimes, depending on our eras, we think of a pantsuit as 1980s, 90s, with those huge shoulder pads.
And the oversized jacket.
And the oversized jacket. When we think
Which I
of
loved, but
it's a style, it's a look, and it can look good. It can also look really bad. Men went through that. Thank goodness it was a short time because it was really not the best look where they had the super skinny pants that came above their ankles with an oversized jacket that looked like it was two sizes too big. Because when you combine something with that narrow, tight fitting of a bottom and that big of a top, or vice versa, it looks like you're wearing somebody else's clothes. And that's not our best classic look. When we think of suiting, I think of some of my favorite suits. And you can look these up. Go on Pinterest and put in 1940s suits. They'll even bring you up patterns of them. Beautiful. They fit well in the shoulders. They were very fitted. They fit snug. And they tended to have a peplum, which I personally love. I have a more hourglass figure, no matter how big or small I am. That waist is still there. And I love that look. And it can be very trimming. People who are more pear-shaped tend not to like that peplum look because they feel like it makes their booty look a lot bigger. If you like your booty, you can definitely accentuate it with that. 1970s, we wore short jackets, very casual. The skirts were fuller. I have to say that's not personally my favorite look, is with the fuller gathered or pleated at the waist skirt. I like sleek. I like slimline. I like sleek. So in the 1940s, they were with a pencil skirt. They were with an A-line skirt. Maybe there was a little flare at the bottom of the skirt. And then we had the Coco Chanel era where they had, I'm probably totally massacring the pronunciation, but bocule, which is a lumpier fabric, very loose weave, and very boxy jacket, which I actually like. That with a pair of straight-legged pants, pretty awesome look. They came to about the waist. That one looked really good too with a pair of high-waisted dress slacks with a wider leg, more of a palazzo leg. And I'm not sure all of you will understand the same picture because I'm finding that things are called things that I don't know the name of it as.
such as
Boho. Boho now when you look it up, is like a palazzo pant or a narrow, straight leg stove pant, but it's made out of something soft and drapey.
Hmm. Okay.
Where boho was what would be a gathered soft skirt, usually made out of gauze. It would be a loose fitting dress, usually made out of gauze or something light. Um,
Lots of rayon.
Lots of rayon, uh, usually longer, but could be short and flirty. Boho was it was a very specific style. Most people thought of it, because obviously that's not true anymore, as kind of what was pictured with the hippies.
What I picture for boho is loose fitting, free flowing type garments. So tunics and loose trousers, or like you said, the flowy skirts, the gypsy skirts, as we used to call them. Um, Maybe one of those crocheted vest type things that's barely hanging on your shoulders.
Yeah, something more like that. It has a lot of little pieces of flat lace,
Mm-hmm.
ties with tassels on the end,
Yeah.
um, very loose and free flowing. And what's now part of boho, I would call beachwear from my
Interesting.
past. Beachwear is more the stove pants that are made out of something loose like linen, and they're straight. They hug the hips and aren't too big.
Mm-hmm.
Boho pants are more of a harem style, or gathered at the ankles, or they're a palazzo with a wide leg. They don't hug or curve or touch really any part of the body as a rule.
Okay.
If they do touch anything, it's tighter across the bust.
Okay.
Um, so
Is beach type clothing, would that be more like
a sarong,
boat wear?
yes and no. A sarong, pedal pushers,
Mm-hmm.
um, calf length or ankle length pants that don't have more than, say, a 12-inch wide leg.
Okay. So definitely more fitted or more structured.
Y- More fitted for sure, not necessarily more structured. Structured would be like your jeans, where there's more to them, because these are loose, soft fabrics, and maybe that's what people are plunging them all together in boho. So that make why I bring that up is because it makes it hard when you're thinking this and I'm thinking this based on the words that we're using. So with suiting, it's a lot the same, because what's your picture of a suit? If you grew up as an adult in the 70s, you're going to be thinking possibly Ralph Lauren. Ralph Lauren made more of a masculine style jacket back then I think he started in the late 60s into the 70s. It's been a long time since I studied that. But it was more of the first really masculine style, or androgynous jackets. I like that term better, but that's not the term that was used back then. So they were straighter, they were more boxy. They weren't the big, overly large ones we saw in the 90s, but they definitely came with that look. The pants were pleated in the front and more straight-legged. Um, or the skirts, where you had this big long jacket with a skirt that was elastic gathered at the waist, or it had a waistband and it had gathers or pleats around it, so it was a wider, more gathered looking skirt, so you had more fabric with it. In the 50s, we had a lot of pencil skirts. The pencil skirts were not like we see today, where they curve around the bottom and come down. They came straight off of your seat. The fullest part of your booty, would fall straight from that. Um, They didn't have huge slits in them. Later, that came about. In the 80s, we also had straight skirts when I was going through my fashion training. We had the straight skirted suits. They were more fitted. We had a puffier shoulder on them, and this was in the 1980s. And a lot of them we started wearing with just a camisole underneath or without. You wore the jacket as your shirt. And those were a lot more A-line straight skirts again. But the jackets were simpler. They were like a cross between that 1950s and the Ralph Lauren. So they were longer, but they were simpler. They weren't peplumed. They didn't have a flare to the hip at all. Then we really kind of moved out of that classic looking, and we became very boring. Everything is just a waistband. You might have pockets or not on women's pants. The jackets don't have the jackets fit at your shoulders, maybe a little past your rotor cup, but they're very plain. And a lot of it's the fabrics that were chosen, the colors that are chosen. We have suiting, or it's classified in suiting as a tank dress with a long jacket with it. That stayed with us for a long time. And that can be really a fun look, but I think many of us feel kind of like Queen Elizabeth.
Or Jackie O.
Well, we'd like to feel like Jackie O. I think more of us feel like Queen Elizabeth.
Fair,
Same
fair.
style of dress.
Yeah.
But yeah, Trump's wife had one that was very Jackie O, which was the tank dress with the short little top jacket for his first inauguration. And this is not a political statement. This is a fashion statement. So, those are what we think of as suiting. And with women's suiting, though, we tend to really flip into skirts or dresses with a jacket. We don't think
Or
of
or like you
pants.
said, the palazzo pants that look like a skirt.
Mm-hmm. We
Or
don't
what were the
think
short ones? Gaucho pants?
um,
What are they? There's another word for
that
them.
was a term for them, though. Again, that's a mixed term. Culottes,
That was the other name.
I think, is what you're thinking of, because the actual gaucho pants were a actual riding pant. We're sort of
Oh,
squirreling here. It was a split skirt, is another term for it, to where I have a great pattern in my huge pattern collection that I loved that skirt. I made one, and it was the split skirt, and it looked like a skirt, but it was actually a pair of pants. When you stood, it pleated in. We have a skirt we did with the pleat that it looks like it's one of those gaucho pants, and it's a
mhm.
skirt. So yeah, you can go the other way. So
So getting back to just women suiting now and people who prefer it or don't. One of the issues I've had and why I don't like to buy women's suits is that they are fitted very, very poorly for
mhm.
my shape. I can't buy them off the rack because my top tends to be smaller than my bottom, and they're always sold as a set, never separates where you can pick and choose. And then trouble that I have found almost unanimously in women's suiting is that the lining pulls funny, even though the outer pant looks okay. Yeah.
And a lot of it really is we're trying to make women's suiting and fitting it as if it were men's suiting.
Mm.
And that's why with the women's tuxedos, why is it such a big thing? Because we're literally making a suit you want that is a classic suit. Is going to have multiple styles of pants. You can have a narrow-legged pant. You can have a regular classic straight-legged pant with the tuxedo down the line of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And here, when we talk narrow-legged, we're not talking leggings.
No.
We're talking a regular slack that is just narrower
Yeah.
towards the bottom. And a palazzo pant. Eventually, we're also going to have a long skirt available and a shorter skirt available.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a suit that is going to be built for the structure of the female. If you have a Y chromosome, there are certain things that are different in how you're structured versus having the two
Mm-hmm.
or the X
X.
chromosomes. Yeah, double X's.
Yep.
But when we make suiting, even for women since the 1970s, we make it where it's long on the side, and we tend to be, women's structure tends to be shorter from the underarm to the waist, period. Men are equal from the underarm to the waist and the waist to the bottom of the hip. Now, these are rules of thumb. Many of you will be going, oh no, I know somebody who, of course you do, because we're not all the same. But when you line up 100 men or 100 women, you're going to see these structural things.
Mm-hmm.
For example, working in men's suiting for 8 years, there are certain things that they know about men's suiting. They know that if they take the outseam of a man's leg and they subtract 10, they'll have his inseam, and it's 98% accurate.
Hmm.
You can't do that with a woman.
No, the ratio would be different.
Exactly. And those are the ratios that nobody changes when they're making pants. What do you always hear
Okay.
if you're sewing? Those of you who say, oh, I sew. Okay, you sew. But what do you hear when you're out there learning how to sew? Pants are really difficult. It's hard to fit a pair of pants.
Hmm.
It's not hard to fit a pair of pants when we take away the idea that pants have to be fitted one way, i.e., everybody shaped the same way. And that's what that's how we're fitting all clothes, but especially pants. And we have for many, many years,
Hmm.
many years, because you have to look at from your waist to the center of the crotch, from the back, from the center of the crotch up to the belly button.
Hmm.
Those are two separate actual measurements. We need to know that full measurement, and then we have to figure out how much of that belongs in the front and how much of that belongs in the back.
That explains why a lot of the pants that I've bought in the store recently don't fit properly through the seat. Is because I remember I talked about to you about this before, and these were just casual pants, but the pants end up sliding down in the back, and I'm always feeling like they're pulling funny because they're equidistant on the front and the back. They didn't give
Yes.
room where I need it.
And stuff I'm reading now, because I try to read up on it because things change, is that in America we make them equidistant.
Hmm. Okay.
In Europe, they make the back a little longer.
Hmm.
So, it's like this. Now, that's not always what you need, though. What if
True.
you have a belly? What if you have no booty? You're going to want to change that,
Yeah.
right?
Interesting.
So, and women come in 500,000 different shapes. We do. Working with men for 8 years, okay, remember, I'm generalizing. They do have many different shapes too, but on the rule, I found they had no booty or they had tons of booty.
There's no in between. It's one
It's
or the
like,
other.
no, very little in between. You either have one or you have the other. So they have baggy seats or it fits really snug. But with men, they tend to make that longer
Hmm. Through the
until
back.
they get to the bigger sizes. Then they don't make it long enough.
Hmm.
Because if you're going to wear it's where do you wear your suit? If you're going to wear your pants underneath your belly, the front needs a lot shorter. A lot
Right.
shorter, but you want that back longer so that we don't have what is in the memes called plumber's crack, right?
Indeed. Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you pull the front down, it's going to pull the back down. So now
Mm-hmm.
you have a saggy seat and you have a saggy front because you have extra material here and your material can't pull up far enough here.
Right.
Where if you shorten this can stay up and this can be where you're comfortable wearing it.
So, um, for men, that's typical. For women, they tend to make it equidistant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, how much of that can be fixed in alterations?
Very little.
Okay.
Um, I do very non-traditional tailoring, so there are things I can do, especially to add to the back. And I can add a placket in the back or a gusset where it looks kind of like think of like your jeans where you have that V-shaped piece in the back. We
Mhm.
can add a piece on the back there, and we can cut down the front. And
Yeah.
I can do this for males or females, but it doesn't change the amount under here.
Right. So you'll still have that
So
weird
it
pull.
can make it more comfortable for you. It can definitely make it more wearable, but it won't. If you've ever worn a pair that fits really well, like really well,
Mhm.
yeah,
You know
you'll
the
still be
difference.
disappointed. You'll know the difference.
Yeah.
Um, Now, when you're talking somebody who is not a plus size or who doesn't have a belly, which is not always a plus size, by the way, um, yeah, men or women, you're still going to have that balance off based on because if you have more here and less here, it's all going to pull that way.
Mhm.
If you have one hip higher than the other, it's going to pull, you're also going to have a sideways pull. And being your mom, making your clothes, I know that your top is a petite. You're very short from your shoulder to your waist, and
Me,
you're
yes.
very long. Yes, you're very, very long. You wear tall on the other end
Yeah.
because your waist to hip and then down to the floor is a tall equal to a tall.
Yeah.
But your top is a petite. You're very short from the shoulder to the waist. So even if we make you a dress that hits your waist, it looks like it's Empire style.
Yeah.
So, some of us are just unique, sweet pea.
Well, gotta
And
be
it's
special somehow.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
But when we have clothes made for us or we understand that there are these differences, which is what we're talking about, there are just differences in how something fits. And if that's not taken into consideration, we're not comfortable in what we're wearing. We don't like the
Mhm.
look of it. Because part of it's getting that pattern right, getting that fit right. And with our ladies' tuxedos, that's what we're doing. We're making a tuxedo, a formal suit. That's what a tuxedo is your ultimate formal suit. Ladies, it won't have as big pockets because it's a formal suit. Um, but it means it's going to be sleek, it's going to be streamlined. A tuxedo does not have venting in the back. And here I'm talking the classic description of a tuxedo that I learned way back in school. It doesn't have a vent in the back. And yes, I know they have some called tuxedos that are out there and they do that, but it's straight. Think of James Bond. There should be no venting in the back. The sleeves are straight. If they have buttons, they're covered buttons. There's satin on the lapels, at least from the collar down, often across the back of the collar. The pants will have a stripe down the side that is in satin. The classic version is a stovepipe. They are never cuffed. They should never be cuffed. Biggest faux pas. They usually are, they're not double breasted, they're single breasted. And they usually only have one button, and that button should hit right below the lapel where the lapel ends.
Hmm.
It doesn't always have buttons on the sleeve. So you don't want to open the pockets except for square pocket. And you'll only want to put a little bit of stuff on your inside pockets. By the way, ladies, having boobs can help hide the stuff that's in your pockets if you like the looser, more androgynous look. Now, saying tuxedo also doesn't mean it has to fit to where you show no shape, the androgynous look. It can be formed to you. We do that for men all the time. Does James Bond ever have a flappy jacket? Never. Never. So think of that. But we're not James Bond. We're James Bond girl. So it's going to literally be able to fit us and look good on us, and that's what we want with our suiting. And in the 1940s, they were all skirts, but those jackets and pants had a class and a style to them that we don't see now. What we see now, it tends to be very boring, and we work really hard to get it to look really cool. A lot of the suits, my favorite suits, I would get a pattern jacket because I don't want something boring to wear. So yeah, um, I got one that had leather pleather collar, or we get them to where they zip, something to try and help make them feel better.
I remember one you had ages ago now, but it was a lovely purple, and it had
Mm-hmm.
this really cool lapel that had little spikies off of it on the
Mm-hmm.
one side.
Yeah, and we tend to do that. There's a beautiful suit out there. I think it's is it called the Curvy Lady Shop off Etsy?
Mm.
But it has this long piece that twirls like this down to the ground.
Oh
You
my
like so
goodness.
you have your train on one side.
That is
These
so
are the fun
1930s.
things that they're starting to bring out, and it's starting to get better. But having done a lot of my professional having to dress up in a suit time between 2000 and 2020, most of them were pretty plain, and I went for a better suit. And then you have to get the suit that looks good on you. And that's always very hard because the fit is very difficult. And if you are a girl a female who doesn't like pants, I mean skirts, then getting pants that fit, that looks good, that aren't uncomfortable and boring is really hard. And so that's with the women's tuxedo, we're trying to bring you a replacement to the ball gown that you can wear repeatedly, which you can't with your ball gown. A power suit, the ultimate power suit that retains your power of position. If you're a CEO,
Or a
director of the
military officer,
orchestra, military officer who doesn't wish to wear their military uniform, dress uniform,
lawyers, politicians.
lawyers. Yeah. There's lots of people of us who need and want this. Now, those of you who feel like you retain your power all the time because you're who you are, yay for you. But you know what? Most people don't feel that way, men or women. When we wear clothes, we wear them for a reason. Clothing is camouflage. We'll talk about that one later. But I hope it gave you some idea on suiting and where we're going with the women's tuxedos, because the next thing we're going to work on once we get our tuxedos out is a line of mother of the bride and groom pantsuits, which have been very ugly. And a lot of it has to do with the fabrics they're made out of. It has to do with the colors that are picked. So we'll talk more about that later. This is Ruthie of Ruthie Ks and Anna of RK Artisans in So Much Talk. Thank you for being with us today.